Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to have you here. My name is Kalyani, and I'm going to be today speaking about speaking out in meetings, in presentations, having to present, and similar situations that you might find yourself in the workplace. So I was just telling my boss Dipti that this talk I'm used to doing a lot of these presentations very often, multiple times a week. But this one specifically put me under a lot of pressure because I feel like now I have to demo everything that I'm going to be talking about today. But anyway, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to unmute or else just type in chat and I will answer, or anybody else can also feel free to answer, right? The more interactive this is, the better it'll be for all of us. So please feel free to do that. Okay. This session will be for about 45 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Let's start. Okay. Let's start with me asking you a question. So I have over here a poll about, here you go. Yes. Have you ever found yourself in a situation like this? Yeah. Multiple choice. So please feel free, whichever you applies to you. Right? The options are, have you ever been asked to make a presentation and felt, or present and felt that you couldn't do it? Or have you ever tried to get out of a similar responsibility? Have you ever watched someone else get all the glory because you didn't, you chose not to take up that opportunity? Have you ever had a situation where you had to stand in front of an audience and then frozen? And have you felt that you've ever missed out on growth, promotion because you lack this skill? Right. Okay, so I'll give it a minute for people to answer. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of people have, I think most commonly been asked to present and felt you couldn't do it. Probably have had to finally do it, but have definitely gone away with that feeling. Then we also have people who've chosen not to and someone else has, and also frozen in front of an audience. Okay, thank you. So the thing is that if you find that, if maybe two of these situations or more, if you find you've experienced them, then I think, as we move forward through this, what I'd like for you to do maybe is think about, how any of these situations applies to you personally, and, how can you, practically start to change things bit by bit, right? So that would be the aim of today's talk. So the important thing over here is that speaking up in the workplace is really important for all of us, right? As individuals, what this does for us is that, some people think of visibility as, sort of selling yourself, and it doesn't sound very good, and it can sometimes be a little aggressive. But the thing is, with increased visibility, everybody's doing their work. Many people are doing their work very, very well, right? And so what do you have to do? What do each of us have to do to be able to stand out stand apart from all the others who are also doing a very good job at whatever they're doing? And that's where visibility comes in. It's not only about what you're doing, but about whether others are, aware of what you're doing or not. And that's why it is important, the more you speak up in different ways, just the more aware people will become of you and of your contributions and the work that you are doing, right? And that in turn will lead to opportunities for growth. The more you speak up, people will know what's going on, what you're thinking, what your ideas are, and in what ways you're contributing. When you choose not to speak, again, you might be doing a lot of work, a lot of very good work. but it may not have the same impact as you would like it to, simply because those who need to know are not aware of it, right? And that, of course, the more people are aware, people in people in leadership positions, the more they are aware of you, the more opportunities you will get in your path, up the workplace hierarchy. Right, and you will be picked on for leadership roles. Typically, what happens is when we enter into the workplace, into the workforce, our technical skills in whatever field we are in, our technical skills are what matters. But as we keep moving up, what becomes more and more important is our people skills. And as we possibly move into management positions, and so the more we speak up, we are speaking maybe on behalf of other people. We are trying to highlight other people's ideas. So that it sort of puts a spotlight on us. But also, what it does, it has people who are our peers and maybe are working under us. It helps them also feel confidence in us and want to have us as their go-to person, right? And so it can work in all of these different ways. So speaking up, I think we're all aware of, that it is important. And then again, at a larger level for the team, having different people with unique perspectives, have their say, even if they might not be the final decision maker, but just having all of these perspectives on the table can then make for more effective outcomes. And also, when anybody can speak up and feels and does speak up, what it does is it creates this environment of safety for other people. So in turn, even if it doesn't directly always benefit me to speak up, what it could be doing is it could be giving the message to other people on the team and around me that they can also talk about whatever it is that they would like to talk about and their contribution in that meeting or in that situation. So it does matter. I think we're all aware of this, but of course, the truth is that it's not easy. My colleagues and I, we are psychological counselors, and very often we have people who come in who are facing this challenge, right? For different reasons, they're finding it difficult to, sort of make their voice heard in the workplace. And so the big question becomes, how do we do this? Before I go into the how do we do this, let's very quickly look at what gets in the way, right? So let's start with the body, because what happens is that I think it affects us not just in our body and in our mind separately, and then each impacts the other. So my question to you is, what happens to you in your body when you are in a position like this, when either you have to face an audience or you're in an important meeting where the stakes feel very high? Does it have any impact on you? Anyone?
Most of the time it gets stiffed.
Sorry? Most of the time it gets?
Stiffed.
I didn't get you. I'm sorry.
I think Disha is saying the body gets stiffed. You get
I think
frozen.
exactly. Thank you, Diksha. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Anything else? Anyone else?
One may tremble, black out, lose focus. One may be staring at a particular person or someone from the audience. It seems like he's staring at you, and that might increase your anxiety level and get you more nervous, right? One may tend to forget uh, the way it was planned. This is how I would start my presentation, but then one would lose out on that after looking at the audience in front of you. I mean,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Parag. Absolutely. So typically what happens to many of us is that we have all of these different sensations in the body which sort of take over, and we start focusing on them. We're starting to sweat, and we're very aware of the fact that we're sweating. Sometimes you feel a little faint, dry throat, and you feel the need to, the words are not coming out smoothly, easily, even though you know what you want to say. Heart rate goes up. So all of these butterflies in stomach, and that sometimes starts well in advance. For some people, it can start a couple of days in advance if it's something big that's coming up. Right. So all of these are, signs that our body is feeling the stress of having to go up and, speak in an important situation. Now, what's happening at this time is that all of this that we're feeling, it's coming from certain thoughts which are running through our head, right? And very typically, these thoughts are negative thoughts, right? Any examples? What are some of the negative thoughts that might be running through our head? Maybe when we're facing people, like for example, that one person who's maybe looking down at their phone or at their laptop while you're talking, right? Or maybe just before, or the other day I had gone to facilitate a session, and it was for newcomers. And then over there, they told me that some of the directors of the company are going to be attending. So I was glad that they told me in the last minute, and they hadn't told me a few days ago, because that might have shifted how I felt about in the run up to that session. But at those times, certain thoughts go through the mind. Anyone over here? Okay, I have something. Nausea, yes, nausea is definitely one of the bodily sensations. Negative thoughts, anyone? Yes, so that I will look foolish. Definitely. That is a very common, I think all of us are very worried about that. We're worried about judgment in different ways, right? Parag, I see you've unmuted.
Yeah, maybe whether I've got all my facts right, am I able to tell the story or narrate the story correctly? Would I be able to take up the questions and address it well?
Yes, absolutely. So will I make mistakes? Will I look foolish? What will others think? What if I make a mistake? What if somebody asks me a question I don't know the answer to? There are all of these different things. These are a few, and there are so many more that might run through our mind, either before or even sometimes during, while we're speaking. All of these worries that come to us, and they're rooted in this fear of judgment, of either are we judging ourselves or other people judging us. So actually how this works is that very typically there is a certain fear inside of us, different types of fears, and those fears then lead to these negative thoughts, and these negative thoughts in turn lead to those bodily sensations. Now, what are these fears? Some of the common fears, one is of course the fear of looking dumb in front of people who we want to actually impress. There's this worry about, I don't really belong here. I don't know what I'm doing over here, what we call imposter syndrome, right? That I'm an imposter over here. Everybody seems to know, and I'm just winging it in some way. There are worries about, who's going to be at that, in that place, in that meeting, at that presentation, and where do I fall in that hierarchy? There are certain cultural and gender factors, and of course, very, very often, somebody, we might have had some kind of a bad experience earlier, and we've carried that with us, and that influences, how we feel before every time we do this. So now there are certain things that we could possibly try to do for each of this. I'm just going to touch upon this. We'll go into more strategies in a little while, right? But so, for example, this fear of looking dumb, right? There are certain things that we can just do, maybe a few simple things, possibly more to reassure ourselves than necessarily to reassure the others, because they may not be judging us as harshly as we are judging ourselves, right? So maybe just preparing a little extra. So knowing what exactly the agenda is, and reading up about it. If there's a way to get some data about it, numbers and data, statistics, that always helps. Again, it helps us to know, to feel more confident, and also, it could come up during, if we can prepare a couple of questions when it's something that we need to attend. All of these, it helps us, just reassure ourselves that, okay, I know what I'm getting into. I have some idea, right? Another thing is to remind ourselves, there's this, again, very often we might ask something or say something, and then later on we might double guess, I mean, judge ourselves, right? Second guess ourselves about, why did I say that? It was a silly question to have asked, or somebody had already said that, why did I say that again? All of these different things come to us. So at that time, again, what might help is to remind ourselves that, engaging is a good thing, right? And more often people will notice us for engagement and not necessarily judge us for what we asked. So asking a question, even if it's been asked before, or or offering up an idea which may not necessarily be taken up, is still a sign of engagement, and that is a positive thing, right? And again, keep reminding ourselves that the harshest judges of us are ourselves, right? We tend to focus so much, and most of the time, people are focusing on themselves and not so much on us. So that is something to keep in mind when it comes to this fear of judgment. Again, with imposter syndrome, again, the debate is with yourself, right? It's very internal. So maybe just reminding yourself of your various contributions that you've made, and whatever successes, small successes, but they count as successes, just keep a note of those, mentally at least, so that you can remind yourself that, you, in some way, you're there at that table or in that situation, in that meeting for a reason, right? And again, there's a pressure that we might put on ourselves, but we don't have to be the expert in everything, right? Again, if we've done a little bit of homework, we've prepared, we have some idea of what's going on in that, that's enough. We don't, if other people bring up other things, we can ask questions about that. We don't have to be the expert, right? Another thing that can help, and again, even with judgment, imposter syndrome, and with the next power dynamics, it could be to find some ally, right? You might have somebody in that meeting who maybe is a mentor or somebody who you trust and you get along very well with, a friend, and so maybe in some way join with them in that discussion, work off of each other when you're in that meeting. Right? When it comes to power dynamics, of course, that can also bring in, we can find ourselves even more self-conscious about what we're saying. So again, to keep in mind that unique perspectives, it could, whether that's somebody who's relatively new in that room to that role, or it could be somebody who's, in a different role, whatever it might be, a unique perspective is very often what people are looking out for and they appreciate, right? And if for some people it's really, it can, the stakes can feel very high, and one might be very reluctant you might have something to say, but you might be very reluctant in that situation to bring it up. So go small, right? Bring it up in a meeting, in a one-on-one discussion later on, right? Or else maybe a written follow-up. Find some other way in which you can, again, just build up your confidence, because the first step is building confidence. When it comes to cultural and gender-based factors, we have this wiring based on our culture and maybe our gender, that, we should err on the side of caution, keep quiet, not really speak up. Don't say something unless you're absolutely 100% sure about it, or you're sure that it's a very good idea. So again, we've set these standards for ourselves, and certain cultural norms and expectations have, sort of cemented that for us. So it is important for us to be very aware that, I tend to follow this, and that's not necessarily helpful in the workplace, right? Acknowledging it is the first step before, and being aware of it is the first step before we can actually make any change, right? Another thing to do is to look around and see, who can a role model be in that room? Who is seeming very confident and you like the way they're speaking? What language are they using? What are the cues they are following? And is that something that I can also do, right? And again, if this is something that is, it's very difficult, set small goals, right? So for example, a small goal could be, I will say something in the meeting, even if it is just agreeing with somebody, right? But that's the very least that I will make sure I will do. So set small goals, meet those goals, and then bit by bit, it'll become easier, right? And this last one of past experiences, again, a very common reason why people, sort of hesitate to speak up in workplace situations. Again, it's quite an internal thing, right? Because the people who we're working right now may not know of our past experience. So the important thing is for us to remind ourselves that, that one person, that particular person, or that particular situation that we were in and we had a very bad time there, that doesn't have to define who we are now. It doesn't have to define what our ideas are in the future, right? And so we have to find a way to, allow ourselves to move ahead from that past experience. And again, the idea is about rebuilding confidence. And how can we rebuild that confidence? Starting small, right? Maybe in a smaller meeting. Get used to speaking up in smaller meetings and then use that confidence that you have built over there in other meetings as well, right? One-on-one discussions, things like that. So the idea over here, and you'll find me constantly saying this, depending on where you find yourself at which level of reluctance to speak up, wherever you are on that scale, start small and then move bigger as you gain that confidence, right? If you have any questions, please ask anything you'd like to say, right? What I would like to say, oh, my slide got ahead of me. But typically, when we have an audience, right, we might find ourselves with 3 different types of audiences. Now, one, as you can see on the screen, is an attentive audience, right? Whether it's just in a meeting or whether you're presenting, you're speaking in front of a lot of people, whatever it might be. They're looking at you, they're making eye contact, they're leaning in, they're nodding along. You can get energy from them, you can feel that energy, and you are able to, use that energy to speak. So that is that is the ideal. All of us wish for that, right? What are other types of audiences we might come across? Any other type of audience, virtual or in person, whatever it might be? Disengaged people, thank you, Alok. Yes, and people who are listeners. Yeah, listeners are fantastic. We like listeners. People who are very actively listening and are showing us that they're listening. But yes, we do have, we might have disengaged audience, or we might have hostile audiences, right? So a hostile audience is not really interested, right? They're judging us for whatever reason, and it might not actually have, and very usually it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with us, who we are, right? It could be the situation they are finding themselves in. It could be that particular topic. It could be what's going on in their lives, right? But they're listening, but they're not very encouraging of us. So we call that a hostile audience. We might have a disruptive audience, or an inattentive audience, right? One who's sometimes we find ourselves in these situations where in person, we're talking to people, they might be on their phones or they might be on their laptops, or in some cases, very often, a couple of people sleeping, right? Here, right now, also, I have no clue how many, some of you have your videos on, but, how many of you are multitasking over here and doing, listening to me, but doing something else at the same time, right? So different types of audiences. The important thing over here to keep in mind is that we do not have a control, a multitasking audience, yes. So the thing is that we do not have a control over who our audience is, right? And that can go for anybody, even really good speakers, and even people who are, new to this and are not yet very confident at speaking. No matter who you are, your audience is not in your control, but what is in your control is all the other things, your prep, your confidence, how you go in, what you're saying, all of that is what matters. So that is what it is, it helps to keep in mind, is that I could try to win my audience over, to make them attentive, get them away from, the other tasks that they're doing. I may or may not succeed, right? And that's absolutely okay, as long as, I am doing what I need to towards, towards speaking. Right? So just keep that in mind. We don't have a control over our audience, but what we can control is how we address them and how we are working with them, right? So now the very, very good news over here is that this is not an inborn talent that, either you have it or you don't, not at all. This is something which the more you practice, the easier it gets, right? It's a skill. So of course, the first step is in building confidence for each of us, right? Because that confidence is what is going to carry us through speaking up in whatever situation it might be, right? So now the important thing is that we have to take up the opportunity. A lot of the time we might feel that the opportunity, it might present itself to us, but we'll say no. No, thank you. I don't feel ready for it yet. Or maybe next time I'll do this, not this time. We'll find different ways to sort of avoid it and push it for next time. Instead of that, it helps to just take that opportunity, right? Because the more times we do it, the better we're going to get at it, right? So every time you get the opportunity, please take it, right? And then we'll work on, what do you do once you said, okay, I'm going to do this, then what, right? Preparation is very, very important. Whether it's the meeting, whether it's a presentation, do your homework, read up on the topic. You don't have to, know every single thing about it, but just have a bare minimum of an idea of what exactly is this. Is there any data out there that I can, be aware of? What are some things which could come up as questions on my part, right? So what this does is that it helps us to go in feeling, okay, I know something over here. And as the discussion goes on, we might be able to contribute in some way also based on that little bit of preparation we've already done. Right? So do that. Again, in the beginning, it might take a little more time, but the more we get used to doing this, the amount of time we spend on prep gets lesser and lesser, right? Then while we're in that meeting, it's important to practice what we call active listening, right? Again, this builds our confidence and it builds visibility, right? What we mean by that is, we've put aside everything, we're making eye contact, we're listening to that person, using our body language. And also we are thinking based off of what everybody else is saying. So if you choose to bring up something, you could build it off what has already been discussed. Maybe sometimes we've come across these situations, right, where somebody's been on their laptop all along, and then somewhere in the middle of the meeting or towards the end, they look up and they say, have we considered this is this? And we've been discussing that in the meeting. It's been in discussion for a while now. So, and that person maybe was not paying attention and they were focusing on whatever, they were doing at that time. So again, while you are in this process of building confidence and working towards speaking up, it helps to build on what has already been discussed, right? Just for example, Ramesh was, I agree with what Ramesh was saying about needing more clarity. Maybe we should add a visual handout next time, something like that. So what you're just doing is you're taking what has already been discussed and you're adding something to it. Right? Start small, right? And very, very small. If you don't feel confident yet to speak up with an idea of your own, ask a question. Right? Or just agree with somebody else, or just whatever small would mean to you, start small, right? Get used to that and then move up. And then, like I mentioned earlier on, use body language. What do we mean by body language? Making eye contact, leaning forward, right? Nodding along. All of this, of course, in person. If you're online, putting on your video helps, definitely. But otherwise, engaging in whatever way that you can. When we're talking about voice, again, it's about matching the pace and volume of that room, right? So you don't have to be loud, but you make sure that you are being heard. Make sure that you are speaking fast enough that people pay attention. We typically don't pay attention when somebody's speaking too slowly. We tend to, get distracted easily. But you're speaking fast enough to get attention, but also slow enough to be understood properly, right? So one tip that I've learned through theater exercises is that you should be able to hear every word that you're saying. Even if you're speaking fast, you should be able to hear every word separately, right? So that is something you could try out, right? So all of these are ways in which we're just building up on our confidence through what we're saying. And then, of course, it's all about practice, right? Practice multiple times. This could be maybe, the first few times you are doing this, it might take a lot of time to practice, right? But practice anyway. And especially practice how you're going to start, right? The introduction part, if necessary. I used to do this when I first started out. I used to have a one-page script, including "Good morning, my name is Kalyani," right? I used to write everything out, and I used to read it a few times. I used to practice it, and now it comes effortlessly, right? Now, I think because of all those early practices, now it just comes very easily. I don't have to think at all, at least in the introduction part, right? So practice this multiple times, especially if there are certain things that you're not quite sure of. There might be certain, for example, in a presentation, there might be certain slides where, you need to spend a little more time. So at least those spend some more time on, right? Another thing that really helps if you're not very used to this is use a mirror, right? Speak in front of a mirror or in front of somebody. So I very often, when there are, scary situations, stressful situations coming up, I practice with my husband, right? So I say, you have to sit down, and for the next 15 minutes, you have to listen to whatever I'm saying, and then give me feedback, right? So use a mirror or use a test audience, anybody who will give you your 15 minutes, listen, and then they might also give you useful feedback, right? So, yeah, I smile. Yes. So script, writing reminders to yourselves, but of course, keep in mind, make your handwriting very, very easy to read, right? When you're writing notes to yourself. If it's a scroll, you'll get a little lost in trying to figure out what you're reading. But thank you for that note. Reminding yourself to smile. Sometimes also underlining certain emphasis words, right? Or certain pause places. All of these things, it just helps us to get used to doing this with more ease. Then what else will help us with our practice? Yes, jargon, right? So what is this sentence trying to say? Anyone? This is basically saying the man loved his dog or loves his dog, right? So the important thing again is that our language should be accessible. Everybody should be able to understand it. The language, and if necessary, break it down. You don't have to have one very complicated sentence, right? We all appreciate it when we can understand somebody easily, right? So make sure that the way you are speaking also is easily understandable. Right? And accent is an important thing also. Common interest points. Yes, if you can bring those up, that helps. Is for sure. Thanks, Sagar. Yes. Accent is another important thing, which is sometimes, we might feel a little bit of pressure. And so we might speak in ways or use, certain words or phrases that we're not very comfortable using, right? Or even just the accent that we're using, we might be trying to change it around a little bit. But we're better off, again, in terms of confidence building also, we're better off sticking with our accent and just making sure that we're speaking in, at a volume and pace which is understandable, right? It's also a part of, the diversity. The more diversity there is in the room, that's a good thing. So, we don't need to change our accent in any way, right? We can stress on certain words, and if people are finding it difficult, they will ask us, and that's absolutely okay also, right? And we can also ask them to repeat. So that's okay. So these are certain, ways and things for us to practice, right? So when we're starting out in this journey, it's important to build our confidence through preparation and practice, right? And what I can promise you is that it'll get easier, and the amount of time we spend on this will get less and less and less with time, right? I have a few more tips which I'll come to, but before that, I just want to address a few challenges. What do I have over here? Somebody has mentioned. Thank you, Alok. Yes, I wasn't going to mention his name, but yes, we do want to avoid Shashi Tharoor's way of speaking. Like I imagine there are very few people on earth who can who understand his way of his language very easily. But most of us, we don't have patience with that, right? We'd rather just move on. So yes, so practice and preparation. I just want to touch on one more thing, which is some challenges that we face. Again, we might have prepared very well. We might have practiced a lot. We might be very good with what we're saying. And yet we might face certain situations, right? There might be somebody in that meeting who is dominating, who's really, in sort of one or two people who are just mostly talking and not really giving space for other people to speak. Or else maybe we're trying to say something, but other people keep cutting in, right? And of course, the difficulty of having virtual meetings and being heard, right? And I would imagine even more difficult than virtual meetings are hybrid meetings, where typically the people who are there in that room, again, are working off of a certain energy, and it's difficult if you are in that virtual space to break into that, right? So does anybody have any ideas about, what do you do when you find yourself in these situations? Let's exchange some ideas here.
I typically, sorry, Parag here. So I typically, especially in hybrid scenario, what tends to happen is that those who are together in office tend to regroup and start discussing among themselves. So sometimes I do just take a pause, just to know just to get all the people together. It happens rarely, but then earlier it used to happen. So I did take pause and maybe probably use a phrase, "Are you with me?" to get them back.
Okay. Okay, sort of getting the attention back, the equivalent of, the judge wrapping the. Uh, yes. Okay. Anyone else? Thank you. Thanks, Parag. Would anybody like to add on? What do you do in such situations? Do you face these situations? Okay. So yes. So these are common. Yes, either a lot of us face them quite often. We try to set context with agenda. So then if people are deviating, then bringing them back. Yes, directing them back. Yes, thank you. Can we connect offline? Can you tell me more about that? What does that? How do you use that? Oh, okay, connect later. Okay, so because this current situation, it's difficult to speak up, stand out, and so we'll do that later. Okay, thank you. So finding a different time and space in which you can actually make your point. Anyone else? Anything else? How do you manage with the dominating voices or being interrupted? How do you push back?
Yeah, again, Parag here.
Yes, Brad.
I-
Yes.
I would say I would let the other person speak out or share whatever other thoughts and not to interrupt. But then largely it would help at times not to get into a conversation or a discussion, because then you are deviating from the topic. So probably we can say that this is something that needs a deeper discussion, and we can connect on the sidelines to take it forward. Right.
Right. Okay. So somebody who is, so we're trying, we make it clear to them that we can definitely continue this, but at a different time. And right now, Right now is not the time. Yes. Make our team members advocate for us. Yes, I think that is a very good idea, which I think it's something that each of us can do. So one is, of course, if somebody is interrupting us, not allowing us to finish, it doesn't help for us in turn to interrupt them and get into that. But definitely the moment they take a pause, we cut in and we say, let me finish my point. I'll just finish that and then, hand the spotlight back to you, something like that. And also, if we are in a position where we see that happening, right, with other people, that somebody's trying to say something and someone else, could be out of, and of course, it could sometimes just be out of enthusiasm. They've had that idea or they've liked that idea, and so they want to, jump in for whatever reason. But we can maybe step in and say, that person was just saying something, let them finish, and then we'll come back to you. So it would help for us also to keep an eye out and advocate for others also, so we can prevent this us from experiencing this challenge, but also others from experiencing this challenge, right? If anybody has any other ways in which you get around this, please do share. But yes, the idea would be not to get into sort of, this match with them, and definitely not needing to be loud, but definitely waiting for a pause and then constantly coming back so that we can finish our point, right? And not just letting it go. So these are some common challenges. So the important thing is that, you don't have to be the loudest. You just have to keep coming back to your point, the point that you're making, right? So I'm just going to, sort of finish up with this idea of, what are some strategies. I'm talking very practical tips which you can start with. So one thing is to, even before the session starts, the meeting starts, or the presentation, whatever it might be, before it all starts, get there early, right? And as people start coming in, say hello, introduce yourself, make some small talk. It could be anything, right? It could be, it's quite hot, shall I open the window? Or, the weather today, traffic, whatever it might be, anything. If we can find some common interest, that would be very good. But again, just starting with that, what that then does for us is, it gives us some allies, as we move into that meeting or into that presentation. And it helps us, build that confidence. We've started speaking already. We know somebody in the audience. At the very least, we know their name. We can address them by name. It's just a part of that process. It helps us to ease into talking. Right. Another thing that helps is to use humor, again, if possible. And definitely we have to be a little careful about what type of joke we're making. But typically starting with a joke or inserting a joke somewhere up, in the beginning can help break that ice and ease everybody into what you're going to be talking about or what it is that you want to say. Of course, we have to be a little careful, steer clear of a joke that might be offensive in some way. The best way to do that is typically I found, I discussed it with my colleagues also. We were saying that using something self-deprecating, right, about yourself or maybe about somebody very, very close to you. One of my colleagues frequently in her talks, when she's talking like this, she refers to various family members, right? So what happens there is that's because there's an ease. She's okay, they're okay with it, and nobody else is going to get upset, right? So we would avoid making a joke about a group of people, definitely nowhere political, right? So we'll avoid all of that. But if we can start with some humor, that makes a good thing, right? Thank you, Sagar. That is also one of the points, keeping eye contact in a systematic manner, right? So, so exactly as you say, start with one section of the audience. I'm jumping to the last point. I'll come back to self-disclosure, but eye contact. So when it's a room full of people, start with one set of people, one person maybe, for a little while, a few sentences, say something, then move to the next set, and then the next section, and so on, right? So that way, and sort of make it easy for you to move from one side to the other. So that way, it's not that you're talking only to the middle two people, right? You're addressing everybody. Everybody feels included. You've made eye contact with everybody there. And again, that also gives the sense of confidence that people think of you as somebody who is confident when you're able to make eye contact. So that is a good thing to practice. So thanks for that. Yes. Then moving to self-disclosure. So self-disclosure can also help. And again, the idea is not to make it about ourselves, of course, but just saying a little something about yourself, which is relevant in that moment. And then just moving from there. That's completely if you want to. If you'd rather not, that's not necessary. But these are certain things that we found. It helps ease us and the people around us, right? Especially if it's not an overly formal situation. And then, of course, take pauses, right? Take a pause. You can ask the audience if you're clear, if they can hear you. Breathe during this time. You might have noticed, typically in pauses, I ask a question and then I take a sip of water. So whatever it is, that also, again, make sure that you're breathing through this, right? Because how we breathe also influences how we our volume. It influences the pace at which we speak, how well people can understand us, right? So make sure to keep pausing from time to time. Again, not slowing down, but pausing, right? So these are certain things that that are immediately applicable. If anybody else can think of anything else, please do share with us, right? This is a good place for all of us to make notes to carry forward with us. Yeah. But that's it from me. These are what I've outlined over here. If anybody has something else, please do share. Any questions, please ask. Right. Some of you, if you've heard me speak before, you might be aware that I always make it a point to always end with asking, what are you going to start with? Simply because, these days we all have access to all these tips and ideas, and there's no dearth of information about how do we change something that we what is a good thing to do. But what's very, very important is actually acting on it, right? We all need to act. Otherwise, simply knowing is not really going to make any difference. It's not going to help us in any way. So when it comes to action, pick whatever seems easiest to do. Pick one thing, start small, and I would say start immediately, right? So start immediately after this, or today if possible, or at least tomorrow. Try it at some place or the other, even if it's in a one-on-one, whether it's with a very small group of people, whoever it might be, with your test audience, whoever it might be with. Start soon, start small, and just keep practicing, right? If you need any additional help, please do reach out.
Yeah, I just wanted one
Yes.
help in
Yes.
guidance in terms of, whenever I give some kind of presentation, or whenever I discuss anything with a few people, my tendency is repeating the same line again and again. So I kind of tend to repeat the same content after 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So how to overcome this issue?
Okay. Do you mean like the same phrase, or is it that the whole thing you're repeating again?
So generally, the thing is that it is a good part also that we are repeating the same concept again and again. But the thing is that people tend to get bored because the same thing is being repeated. In other cases, my colleagues do is that they tend to come back to the same point, but quite differently. The message is same, but
Yeah.
I am not able to crack this particular thing.
Right, right. So one thing that could possibly help is to actually practice different ways of saying the same thing, right? And again, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. It doesn't have to be long. You can use AI if you want for help. You have these certain ideas. What are some different ways, some different phrasing, or a different angle by which you can put forth the same thing. So either you can choose to do that, lean into the fact that you're repeating it, and so you repeat it but in a different way, or else practice in such a way that you don't move. When you find you have the tendency, oh, here I can easily slip into repeating the point again, decide at that point and prepare what different thing are you going to say in that moment, right? So these are a few different options that you have. Either you very intentionally decide, identify where and decide what you're going to say differently at that point, the same thing differently, or where you're going to completely avoid going down the same road again.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thanks. Again, it comes down to practice. But like I said earlier on, and I do assure you, what will feel very effortful in the beginning will actually become easier and easier just, once you do it a few times. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the poll. Yes, Sagar.
Then, are there any kind of hints or body language wherein we can understand that people are kind of observing what we are talking? They are kind of getting it what we are trying to say. Are there any signals, body languages in terms of audience? One is obviously they nod your head,
Yeah.
but that is kind of in corporates many of the people do such kind of thing. But I don't know whether it is genuine or not.
Actually, that's an interesting question. Does it matter if it's genuine or not? If they're if they're nodding, does that mean that they're not listening? But okay, again, it's dangerous for us to get caught up in what is actually going on. We're trying to decode all of that. Again, I think the important thing. So one thing is definitely when people are paying attention, we do pick up on it because they might be making on one hand, they might be making eye contact. They might be nodding, smiling, facial expressions might be changing with what you're saying. But on the other hand, sometimes, people are also working on something, but they do sometimes they'll stop, they look up, they'll nod, they've heard something that they are, relating with, it resonates with them. And so they nod at that time also. So again, maybe, when something is very obvious, we pick up on that cue that, yes, this person does seem to be listening because it seems very obvious. And we take that, encouragement from that. So, better to see it as a positive thing rather than trying to decode, do they actually mean it or not? If they're not listening, again, to remind ourselves that it's okay if they're not listening, there's probably a reason why they're not listening, and that has to do with them and doesn't have to anything necessarily to do with me, right? It's not easy, and again, it helps to just, the more we do this, maybe it becomes easier for us to also understand what's happening. Somebody's mentioned in the chat, sometimes I feel I'm not able to control the words that I'm speaking while presenting. The words get mixed up. Yes. So typically, I don't know if you keep notes. I find sometimes with certain topics, again, sometimes, I need to talk in certain situations where there is a lot of jargon. Or else, maybe there's just something which has a lot of, things that I have to remember to say. So it helps sometimes to sort of just make a note of the points, the words, right? So that, you can keep coming back to the words. So keeping notes is absolutely okay, as long as you're not reading off of it like a textbook, referring to your notes from time to time. That if that helps you, please, use whatever tools will help you, right? Will help you feel confident and to speak clearly. And rehearsing, in the beginning, it might feel scripted. If it's feeling scripted when you're saying it, so the truth is, I'm also theater. I also act in theater, and I'm going to go back to my favorite answer, which is practice. The more number of times you say it, the less scripted it will be, because then you're just saying it, right? You're saying it again and again and again, and then it will just come easily. And the more, when you have to search for, oh, how is this? How did I say this sentence? How should I be saying the sentence? That's when it gets, it might come across as sounding very scripted. But if you just say, if you practice this even with just take one sentence and just say it 10 times in a row, by the 11th time that you're saying it, you're just going to be saying it, right? You won't be saying it in a very, in a way that sounds very rehearsed. So you could try that out. Try that out with just maybe take 3 sentences, right? And say that, practice that many times, and you might see that there is a difference in that sense. Yes, Parag?
Yeah, just to add to what you said, one more probably recommendation, because this has helped me a lot, is if you are recording any meeting or training, or then go back and do playback to understand how it went, right? And then you would be able to relate to what you planned versus what actually unfolded. And that would help you immensely in terms of what where it went wrong or where it went great uh, in terms of prepping for the next session.
Thank you, Parag. That is a fantastic idea, which is just to record yourself and listen back. Again, we tend to judge ourselves quite harshly. So it shouldn't, we shouldn't allow it to sort of send us down this rabbit hole of, oh my God, this sounds terrible. But it can, if we're looking out for specific things, if we're looking out to say, okay, am I clear? Am I using the same language again and again? Am I spending too much time on this? So if we go in to listen to, if we record ourselves and then go back with very specific questions, which are not just allowing us to make a general, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, Parag, but, not allowing us to make a general judgment, but more specifically to see, are we able to meet this certain criteria that, of being able to speak well? Then that could, again, that is a great feedback that we can get for ourselves without involving others. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. That's sort of, anyway, we're at the end. This was just my, the last, question of where you're going to start. Thank you. If anybody has any more questions, please do stay back and ask me, or else you can reach out. I'll send a handout with some, takeaways and also some, additional resources that might help you. And if you have any more questions, please reach out to me and my colleagues. We're happy to help you with, working through whatever challenge you're facing in this or any other issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kalyani.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Diksha, are you there?